I think of myself as a spiritual person. I I look up at the night sky and it's not all science for me. It's wonder and it's amazement. And there's a tendency for people to think, oh, it makes you very small, but I don't think it makes me small.
Hello and welcome to the Atticus Review podcast, Atticus on Air. We're really excited today because we're with Steven Swiryn. He's the author of The Deep Field, which is our next piece that we're publishing, and we're thrilled to meet him. And he submitted through the open submission process, so we don't know anything about him, and except that we both really loved the piece. And we'll talk about that, as we get going. I've also got David Olimpio here, who is the publisher of Atticus Review. So let's get started. Welcome, Stephen.
Thank you. Good afternoon.
It's great
Hey,
to see
welcome.
you.
Um, do you want me to kick off, Boo, or do you
Sure.
have some?
Yeah.
Um, I guess I'd just start with, since we don't know anything about you, some background, and I saw you seem to have a pretty interesting academic background, and you were also a cardiologist. I saw, so I guess, well, I don't want to fill in all the blanks, but I was just curious about how you went from that into sort of your interest in what some of these topics are and involving space and time, and then also like what other hobbies you have.
Okay. Well, in terms of the medicine, my career was as a what's called a cardiac electrophysiologist, which is the piece of cardiology that has to do with heart rhythms and abnormal heart rhythms. So that field arguably started in 1969, which was the year I started medical school. So I sort of grew up with the field, and it was very interesting and a lot of fun. And I think as opposed to some other fields of medicine, which are more complicated or difficult or less advanced or however you want to describe it, like cancer or brain things, cardiology is getting to be very well understood, and there's a lot of good that can be done to help people. So that was attractive to me. And it had some excitement where because there are lots of emergencies in that field and a lot of successful outcomes and so it was very interesting and I did a nice combination of academics and published depending on how you count 120, 130 peer-reviewed articles, and then a
Mm-hmm.
bunch of book chapters and review papers, and then a couple hundred abstracts. So it's there's a bunch of publications that aren't literary publications. I also did a
That's
lot.
a lot. That's a lot of peer-reviewed articles. I mean,
Uh,
wow.
um, and then I took care of a lot of patients, and then I also very much enjoyed the teaching aspect of it, and was probably more proud of the teaching awards I got than the publications. But um, I come from a family of teachers, not doctors. In terms of the astronomy, I we come from a camping family. My parents' business. My father was a basketball coach, and that's the Michigan hat today. But also,
Yes, just for people that are watching, today is
this is
April 7th, and
right.
the
Michigan won
the
the national championship in basketball yesterday. So
was it last night?
over
Was it Monday night?
last night,
It's just
yes,
last night. It's very
yeah.
fresh. All right. Well,
So go
congratulations.
blue. And so my father was a basketball coach and then became a middle school principal in Chicago public schools. But his other major job um, was he ran a summer camp for many years for children in the Chicago area, along with my mom. And then my wife's family also ran a camp. They have an overnight camp in Wisconsin that they started. And both camps are still growing strong after since the mid 1940s
Mm.
with they're
Can I
on
ask you a
third
question about that?
ownerships. Yeah.
This is just kind of an aside, but it feels like some of those camps are just always in the family for generation after
Yeah.
generation. Was your camp on your mom's side or
My
your dad's side?
My parents started the camp.
Oh, they started it. Okay.
Yeah,
In the 40s, in the 1940s?
in
Yeah.
about 1945. It depends how you count, but
Yeah.
1945-ish. And then
Cool.
sold it when they retired to my first cousin. And then
Okay.
my first cousin has sold it to some delightful and very successful people who were counselors at the camp.
Okay.
So they're not family, but they feel like family. And then my
What's it called? What's the camp called?
Tamarack Day Camp.
Tamarack Day Camp.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
And then my wife's family ran started a camp in the 1940s also in northern Wisconsin, Hayward, outside of Hayward, Wisconsin, called Camp North Star for boys. And then when they sold it, when they retired, they sold it to a longtime counselor and colleague that they had, and then he sold it to another camper and counselor who has inherited. And but both camps are still doing very well and are in good hands. So it's nice for us to see. And my son went to both camps and was a counselor at both camps when he got older, and still
So
has
is
a
there
lot
an
of close
astronomy?
friends
So
from
where's the astronomy
well,
thread
yeah,
in?
what I started out to say is that when you grow up in a camping family, you spend time outdoors, and between that and scouts, you're taught that the night sky is something that's gorgeous and fascinating, and it fascinated me. And then I had a teacher, a wonderful teacher in fifth and sixth grade, that same teacher, who started an astronomy club, and we go out to the softball field outside the school and learn about the different constellations and things. And I got a small telescope that didn't work very well. And then just before I retired, um, we we bought a vacation home outside of Santa Fe and New Mexico. And the reason we got it outside of Santa Fe, not in the town, is because the sky was darker, and I got a nice telescope, which I'll send you a picture of. Uh, and so then I had more time and was much more excited about it. I'm a member in good standing of the Royal Astronomical Society of Canada, which if you send in your check for 35 or $40 or whatever it is, you can be a member too. And but I did they have very nice programs of observing for all the way beginners to fancier people, and I participated in some of those and learned a lot about the night sky. And I don't go outside after dark without looking up to see what's up. And of course, in the Chicago suburbs where I live, you don't see hardly anything ever because it's even if it's not cloudy, there's so much light pollution, there's not much to look at. But in Santa Fe, it's magical. It's just magnificent, and we that's where the telescope is, and so we spend a lot of enjoyable time now with my son and grandkids. Looking at the night sky and enjoying it.
Cool.
So would you say that you're an amateur astronomer
I'm
and
a
a
very
professional
amateur. I'm a
cardiologist?
very amateur astronomer, yes, and a professional retired cardiologist, yes.
And also an emerging writer?
And now an
It
emerging
seems, yeah.
writer. So how
Yeah,
did you get into writing, or
I
have you
always
always
in, I
written?
always
Yeah.
enjoyed writing in school, but it didn't, you know, I never wrote anything carefully. And for medical
Except for
publications,
hundreds of
well, no, but they don't allow it. That's what I was going to say. That I have publications in a bunch of medical and engineering journals because we did research in collaboration with the engineering school. And but they don't. The editors of those journals don't allow you to write creatively at all, hardly at all, if at all.
Hmm.
And the writing is quite stilted and abbreviated and awkward often, and they don't let you do anything fancy or interesting in those, except the
well,
science itself is
s-
interesting. But
so when you retired, is that when you started doing more creative writing or
so
and also what genres do you write in? Like what kind of other writing
yeah,
do you do?
um, just before I retired, I got involved. I had a patient who was a very fine poet and an English professor at the university, and he suggested, since I said something at a clinic visit of his about wanting to write during retirement, he made some suggestions, including suggesting a specific adult education course at Northwestern that's being taught by just a superstar teacher and lovely man named Fred Schaefer, who's a, a Chicago legendary editor and teacher of writing. And I took a number of his classes on how to write short stories, which I knew nothing about. And I tried to write poetry and was very bad at it, so I've given that up. Um, so mostly I've tried to learn to write short stories, and I have maybe 10 of them that are mature now. Two are published, and then the essay that you're about to publish would be the third literary publication, assuming that the essay is considered literary. Um,
Yes, I think it makes the grade.
and
So let's segue a little bit into the deep field since it seems like a good time to
okay,
do that. Um, I'm going to talk a little bit about, just as an editor, my experience and David. So we did this open submission and it started in, I think it was November. And then we did the process that we do when we start filtering out and we read everything very carefully and we talk about it. And it's, we vote on things and we get opinions. And then at the very end, we were just pinging back and forth and it was just down to me and David's voting. And out of all of the pieces, we both chose yours as number one, which I just thought was crazy because there were so many things and so many. There was poems.
Because we
The theme
usually,
was home.
yeah, we
Yeah.
usually like kind of compare the votes and then sort of stack them, but we were at that was pretty easy
well,
because
it's
we
kind of you to say.
Yeah, well, but it was kind of funny because I think I said to David, I have a clear favorite, and he was like, "Well, so do I." And I was like, "Well, what's yours?" And it was the same. And so, which is not to say that they weren't all really strong. There was a lot of really strong pieces, but I think so. I'll just speak for myself, and then David can talk about it. But like for me, I think what I really loved, there's a lot to love about this piece, but I do think you have a very easy rambling tone around things that are very hard to grasp. I would almost call this a science essay, not as much as it is it's not really a memoir. It's more of like a science essay with a little bit of memoir. And you're really exploring this photograph of the deep field. It starts with that, taken with the Hubble telescope, and you use it to just kind of go from one idea to another, always coming back to, the deep field. And I'm not a physicist. I rarely read science writing, but I do have this sort of metaphysical attraction to, I'm metaphysically attracted to the black hole. I'm metaphysically attracted to quantum physics, all that stuff. And you make it very easy to follow and understand. And it's not a really long essay, but it covers what it sets out to cover. So that's part of, why I was so drawn to it. So how about you, David? And if you don't mind us, probably embarrass Stephen, but we're just complimenting you endlessly on this piece, but we wouldn't publish it if we didn't feel this way. So how about you, David? What was it that you were attracted to?
Yeah, me too. I mean, I really like. I'm also sort of I'm below an amateur physicist. I'm like whatever. I just like it. I'm a hobbyist, and I do like to include that in my writing as well. And I was actually going to ask you. Some of my questions have to do with some. I just read recently this book, Existential Physics, which I wondered if you had read, and
No.
but anyway, so yes, that was a big reason that I liked it. But I also liked your style of sort of hopping between that and personal reflections, and that whole approach to writing really appeals to me. Just sort of blending factual or scientific things with personal reflections.
So yeah, I guess David, do you want to segue from that into any of the more technical physicist questions? But don't go too detailed. I'll let you know
Right.
when it gets boring, since I'm not a physicist. Go ahead. We don't want to like
Um,
lose people on
well,
this.
yeah.
Let's
Well, the
go.
thing that I was gonna comment on that I think I liked the most, and probably what I like about physics is contemplating time and how you talk about when we're looking at light, we're looking at the past, and maybe the way to translate this question is do you think time exists? Do you think time is fluid? Do you think does that extend into your feelings on determinism or sort of that we're all destined to a certain outcome in life? And I think that gets back to some other things which maybe we could get into about how this is a reflection on age, I think, too. And
Okay, that's a lot already.
yeah.
Give him a break.
First of all, I'll turn 79 years old this summer, and when
Mm.
you get to be 79 years old, you think about such things as obviously aging and but also your place in the universe and how that's going to be really short and you think about um, this spirituality. I'm not religious, as you know from reading the early draft of the piece. But I think of myself as a spiritual person. I, uh, I look up at the night sky and it's not all science for me. It's wonder and it's amazement and there's a there's a tendency for people to think, oh, it makes you very small, but I don't think it makes me small. If we can think through all these things and learn the magnificent science behind it. I was at a meeting yesterday of a bunch of old retired men that we get together and we discussed a book on exoplanets yesterday, which is a wonderful, exciting, very rapidly moving topic. And it teaches
Are
you
exo,
about
did you mention, I think you did mention exoplanets
I
somewhere
mentioned
in the
it very
end notes,
briefly.
maybe?
Yeah,
What
yeah.
was the context in which in which exoplanets enter the deep field? Do
Um,
you remember?
it's a good question. I don't
It's
remember
okay. It's
how
okay.
exoplanets came
But
up
as
into
we're
it.
talking, I just wanted to also note two things, which is that yesterday was also the day that the
Yeah,
astronauts went
that's
around the back
Yeah.
side of the moon.
Uh-huh.
So it's also relevant to your article and
Right.
or your essay. And then also just personally, I don't know if you've seen the movie Planet. Was it Project Hail Mary? But there's a new movie out
No, but
about
I
some of these
heard very good
questions.
things about it. And it sounds like something that my wife and I'll probably be
Yes.
uh, enjoy.
Well,
Uh,
I think that speaks. I think that, every like 5 years at least, you have Interstellar with Matthew McConaughey, you have The Martian with
yeah,
Matt Damon. Like every
right.
5 years or so, you have there's one with Brad Pitt. Every 5 years or so, a hot like superstar goes into outer space, and I think that sort of it speaks to everyone. I think
Yeah.
it's very human to be fantasizing and asking questions about what is out there. I just think, and if
Mhm.
you're not,
Yeah.
like, what's wrong with you? So I just, I think this piece will also appeal to everyone on some
Yeah.
level because we all have curiosity. But I want you to go back to what you're saying, which is about your breakfast club that talks about
Yeah,
exoplanets.
we have lunch actually, but because nobody
Lunch
wants to get
club.
up early, we're all retired. But we talked about exoplanets, and that's actually how it came into my essay. Now that we're thinking about it, is I was I'm at the end of the essay, I was talking about my reaction to the deep field because the deep field is an extremely famous, prominent photograph, so prominent that every new big telescope that gets put into space or built on in Chile, northern Chile, or where a lot of them are, um, does a deep field because it's so important an image that everybody wants to do that. And if you go, you can visit the astronomy department at Northwestern, for example, on Friday nights with your family, and they have a talk by somebody who knows something, and then you can go to this very old telescope that and see it and stuff. And on
But
the
I mean, aren't there?
are there are there's
Wait, can you hear me?
astronomical.
Mhm.
Can you hear me? It's hard. I like interrupting. It's hard when I'm using my mute button. But with the deep field, when you say that all of the new telescopes do a deep field, aren't there millions of deep fields you can do, or is it the same deep
Yeah,
field?
yeah. There are millions of places you
Deep
can look
fields.
that you could
Okay.
call a deep field, and each one has thousands of galaxies that you see. But the deep field is a concept of we're going to look at a place that's not cloudy with Milky Way stars, but we're going to try to look deep into space past all that. Um, is such an important and thrilling and magical project that everybody wants to do that. And when you visit the old observatory at Northwestern, they have a bunch of astronomical photos on the wall, and the biggest one and the most prominent place is the Hubble Deep Field because it's a central image in observational astronomy. And that's both for scientific reasons. It's extremely important scientifically to think about and understand, but also for spiritual reasons. It has to do with your place in the world. The exoplanet context for the essay was that are we, there was a statement not quite at the end, but near the end about what does all this mean? And said, are we alone in the world? No, of course we're not alone in the world. There are trillions of exoplanets, and this was part of our discussion yesterday with the retired men's group. Um, it's inconceivable that we're the only place that has life. And then you get into all kinds of interesting arguments that we don't have to get into about, yeah, but we're too far away and we missed them, or they were here and they found us boring, so they just went on and didn't let us know. There's all kinds of interesting stuff you can say about that. But it has to do with our place in the universe. And is it small or large? Is it unique or not? Um, and and so it gets at some really central issues that at the end of one's life you think about.
Well, here's a layperson's question. Um, what is the difference between physics and astronomy? Because obviously
Oh,
they intersect, but they're also separate sciences. Like, how would you, like,
yeah.
just, so what's your, because I understand, like, once you start getting to space and time and quantum, then you're really in physics, but astronomy is more like the stars and like looking out and measurements and all that, but they do kind of merge somewhere. So how would you
Yeah,
explain
I
that?
think modern astronomy is very much based on physics and has become astrophysics. And I think it's very hard to participate, certainly academically, in astronomy without a deep understanding and education in physics. Um, there's a lot of physics that's not astronomy. If you're looking at particles, or I just reread The Making of the Atomic Bomb by Richard Rhodes this year. It's his 25th anniversary, I think, and of of that great book. And they're not talking about astronomy in there. They're talking about particles and when you break them up and uranium and how it decays and things like that. So there's a lot of physics that's not astronomy, but modern astronomy is very, very part and parcel physics. Um,
Right.
Early astronomy may not have been, if the ancients looked up at the sky and saw some planets and discovered all kinds of cool stuff. And they weren't thinking physics. I don't think they didn't know any physics.
So all right. So let's talk a little bit about writing, because I
Yeah.
do need to dig into that a little bit for the
Yeah.
profile. Did you have a question, David?
No, I was thinking the same
Uh,
thing. This is a
okay.
podcast, probably mostly writers, so
Right.
we
Well,
should-
like I said, I mean, I think
yeah.
it's also a little bit of a teaser to get people to look into your piece that we're going to publish. And, we've been talking about the deep field. If you really want to understand it, you'll have to read the essay. And I guess my question is, with some of your other, you said you had about 10 short stories that you were working on. Are a lot of them science based, or are they just all over the place? Or how would you
They're
describe your process?
they're mostly about loss. Um, and I and they try to be about the relationship between usually a couple of people, but I'm not as good at that. For example, as my wife is a social worker, and she's really good at understanding what motivates people and what people can be like. So I get a lot of good suggestions from her. She'll ask me questions that are obvious to her about, well, what's going on with this character? And I say, gee, I never thought about that, but I should have. So that's one of the things that I've been trying to get better at through writing. Um, I There's science that comes into the writing. There are a few that have medical themes. The first one that I published was a husband and wife who were aging, and then she gets quite ill in it, and that it touched on my medical background, and I know some things about what that stuff is like so I can write it. If you are supposed to write what you know, then that's something that I could do. And there's some cardiology things. There's a story about that's not published yet about a man with a defibrillator who decides to have it turned off because he doesn't want to not die suddenly, which is a thing that I've participated in it as a decision with a number of people, and as you can imagine, it becomes quite emotional and difficult on all sides, and um, it's something that has to be thought through carefully, and so that makes for good stories to start with. The other thing that informs my writing is I also
I'm sitting here trying to interrupt. It's a good thing I have my mute button because tried to interrupt like 5 times and then I realized I was muted. But on I just want let's explore that topic a little bit because I was thinking about that about cardiology. You were talking about how, working in that field, you got started with a certain technology. Like I think you said it was electrophysiology. Is that what you said it was called?
right, yeah, the heart,
So they kind of invented it when you were in med school. So you kind of followed the trajectory of the technology or
yeah,
what partnered with it.
arguably as applies to human health, electrophysiology became a field. It's um, as I started medical school, and then
Right.
a guy who was really good at it and a pioneer in it came to be chief of cardiology, and I when I was a sophomore in medical school, so I he's a wonderful was a wonderful teacher and
He was
became
like a
a
mentor for
mentor
you.
eventually. Yeah.
So
Um,
what I hate I not to put you on the spot in terms of longevity, but what year did you graduate? What year when were you in med school?
I graduated medical school in 1973.
Okay, awesome. So
So
here's my question. Here's what I want to talk to you about. And
yeah,
this is totally not, this is not writing related, but I think it's interesting. You were just talking about a piece, you said it hasn't been published yet about somebody who doesn't want to have, who wants to have their defibrillator turned off. Is that what you
he
said?
had had a cardiac arrest and had a defibrillator implanted, which is one of
Uh-huh.
the things that often happens after such an
Pretty
event.
common.
And
Hmm.
then because of the circumstances that had changed in his life, he decided he wanted it turned off.
Right. So my question about that in terms of cardiology, and this is just a personal question. I just came back from visiting my parents, and my mom is 88. My dad's 92. And my mom is in a very bad situation, like in terms of like her mental condition and her living conditions because of her mental condition.
Yeah,
I won't go into detail, but it's a kind of tragic where she ended up, and it had to do with her body outliving her mind. And
yeah,
so I personally feel like, with the advances that have been made specifically in cardiology, like a lot of people, I feel like a lot more people are outliving their mental, like back in the day, everybody had a heart attack by the time they were 60, I
yeah,
mean, and I guess so
yeah,
I feel like there's some kind of a balance. Like three of my grandparents were dead my whole childhood, and I'm not saying that was a good thing, but they died of heart attacks. So, what are your thoughts like that on sentience and consciousness and like the sort of health of the body versus
yeah.
like the health of the mind?
Well, the brain is, I, I have always felt way more complicated than the heart. The heart's just a muscle that pumps the blood. There's an electrical system that's actually similar to the brain's that tells the heart now it's time to pump and here's where you should squeeze first. That's what electrophysiologists deal with, is that electrical part. And and the brain is nowhere near as well understood as the heart, for a whole variety of complex reasons that we don't need to get into. And your point about quality of life instead of quantity of life is a very important one, um, that we aren't very good at yet. Um, and I think we're getting better at it. Um, but we're not very sophisticated as a civilization about taking care of old people yet.
No, we're not. And I feel like, and I also just feel like it's like, again, specifically cardiology, there were just major breakthroughs in the last, I guess, 50 years that have completely
Yeah.
changed life expectancy, especially for men.
Yes.
And it's just, I don't feel like we're prepared for it sort of
Yeah.
with care, how to care for people when
Yeah.
they live so long, you know?
Well,
Do you feel
one
like
of
it's
the
connected? I'm not blaming cardiology, but do you feel like that it is a lot of it has to do with heart health, or am I
Well,
just
it's
like
not just
spit?
heart. There,
Yeah,
all the other
cancer.
fields of medicine have improved, and cancer is rapidly improving now, cancer care. And hopefully brain care will improve rapidly too. The management of stroke has completely changed in the last 10 or 20 years, hopefully preventing some of the bad outcomes we used to see. My major research interest was a heart rhythm called atrial fibrillation, which is extremely common, especially in older people, and causes strokes that are particularly bad strokes often. So everything's connected in that way. Um, I guess, you know, people not that long ago used to die in childhood of childhood diseases that we had largely stamped out, although some are coming back because of things we don't want to get into now that get political very quickly. But then people lived longer, and then people had lung problems and died of lung cancer. And then a lot of people quit smoking, which was a good thing because it caused lung cancer and heart attacks. And and then cardiology got really good, maybe in part because of all everybody was dying of heart attacks. So that's where the money for research was put and the interest of scientists was put. You have balloons.
I don't know why. I don't know what happened.
Um, and and uh, And so cardiology got more and more sophisticated. And now a lot of people, one of the people at my meeting with the group of men yesterday, one of them um, would have died, I guess it's about 10 or 12 years ago, for sure, except for all the research and developments that have been made in the time of my career, not by me necessarily, but all the things that he was treated with have come along since I was in medical school and not only saved his life, but he's living a very high quality life now. He enjoys
Yeah.
himself, goes places and travels and
Yeah,
is
I
with
think
the
you make a
people who
good
love him.
point.
So it's
Yeah, I feel
not
like your
everybody who
answer.
does badly from
Yeah.
it.
Yeah. I feel like your answer is typical. I feel like your answer to that question kind of reminds me of your essay, The Deep Field, because you have this like because of your medical background and the way you think, you're able to take a step back and see big picture. You also like you have the wisdom of a couple years behind you, and I'm personally proud to be supporting an emerging writer. Are you in your 70s? I don't know. I don't
I'm
know
going to
how
be
old you are.
79 this summer.
Okay, I am personally proud that Atticus, that we sifted through a collection of stories and we chose one by someone who is emerging as a writer. You're not already, you're not Stephen Sachs, like you're figuring it out now and you're coming to the table with like decades of experience in a completely different profession. And I think that really adds a lot of richness to the writing. And I think this might be a good time to just talk about NFTs a little bit. Like, why don't we talk about Steven's response when he first got our email? I'll give background. So when we told Steven, we're so excited to publish your essay, and of course, as I said, David and I are both invested at this point. We really wanted this essay, and Steven sort of came back and said, "What? I didn't realize you did NFTs. I'm not sure. I don't know about NFTs, like, which is a pretty common response, So yeah, I guess, Stephen, if you could tell us like what your initial sort of feelings, and then you went and did your research because you are obviously a very research oriented person,
Yes.
and you got some answers. Why don't you just tell us like, your experience? And I think it'll be helpful for other people because I don't think you're the only
Okay.
person who's resistant to NFTs.
Well, I'm my wife says about me, change, don't put me through it. So anything that's new, my reaction is what? What are you doing? What? And then you add the word cryptocurrency, which I had one of our very dear friends is actually a former, he's retired now, but he's mostly retired. But he's a former very high end guy from the Federal Reserve and specialized among other things, in cryptocurrencies and lectures internationally about cryptocurrency. And we have a group of friends who get together every so often at our house for what we call the Sunday Salon with our noses in the air. And we have somebody we know or somebody we don't know, but we like the topic, talk to our group of 20 or 25 friends about something. And he lectured to us about money and talked about cryptocurrency. And his reaction to cryptocurrency is a Ponzi scheme. It's a scam. And so as soon as I heard the word cryptocurrency, I was very skeptical right away. But then
Okay,
I
let's
checked with
just
a bunch of,
before you continue,
yeah,
let's just like let me just get a little I'm just gonna make sure I heard you correctly.
yeah,
So you're saying that you are you went to a lecture by a person who's a friend who is a retired friend who was very high up at the Federal Reserve,
yeah,
and his specialty was one of his specialties was cryptocurrencies, and he thinks cryptocurrencies are a Ponzi scheme slash scam. Is that
yeah.
correct?
Yes. And
Okay,
he's not
David,
just
do you have
somebody
any
I heard
thoughts on
lecture
that?
once. He's somebody I have dinner with once
Oh, I
every
get it. Okay,
weeks.
so he's a
So
friend.
so we
But
talk
wait,
about this
David, do you
whenever
have
it
a
comes
response to
up.
that? What do you think of that, David? David is a
Well,
cryptocurrency
I
expert
think
himself.
it's been taken over by a lot of grifters over the last several
Okay.
years,
Yeah.
and but not taken over. I don't. There are still a lot of genuine, smart, sort of forward-thinking people who think this is who think cryptocurrency legitimately is the answer to fiat currency
Yeah.
debacle that we're kind of in right now, which I could probably pull out because I have become much more interested in economics than I ever thought I would be over the last 5 years. And but yeah, I mean, I could probably find several people that would call fiat currency a Ponzi scheme, you
Yeah.
know.
But to be
So
fair,
yeah,
to be more fair and not just emotionally reactive, which is what my reaction was, um, every new technology that's exciting is used for ill and for good. It's very it's the rule.
Yeah.
Witness the making of the atomic bomb, which I just reread. Obviously, it's their nuclear energy has got a huge amount of upside, both medical applications and for energy supplies. But then you can also make a bomb. So the same is probably true of cryptocurrency. I shouldn't be that
No,
flippant.
it's okay. I'm glad that you're, I mean, it's
But
something
no,
we talk about
yeah,
we talk about this all the time. I mean,
yeah,
David and I, when we first started the magazine, like we spent like 6 weeks writing newsletters about like, please do not freak out about this being cryptocurrency.
yeah,
And a bunch of people freaked out anyway. So, okay. So what you're saying is that first,
I'm
that was your
sorry.
first reaction. And then you kind of talked to some people and decided, why not try it? Is that what
Yeah,
happened?
I reached out to a bunch of people, some of whom had never heard of it. The day after I agreed to do it, because I was reassured by what I read and what I heard,
Mhm.
the day after that, I heard back finally. There's a cousin whose daughter is a Hollywood producer, and and she's a wonderful writer. She's a serious writer, not, and and I told her, what is this thing? And she said, oh yeah, that's in every contract I sign. Always. It's ubiquitous. And don't worry about it. It's nothing. And so
Oh,
since she knows what she's doing and has experience with this, it was the day after I said, oh, sure, I'll do it. But it reassured me
interesting. She said
completely
it was
about
in
it.
that
hmm.
she said there was like an NFT clause in
There's an
every
NFT clause in every contract that she deals with, and that's what she does. She's a producer.
Wow, that's
She says
interesting.
it's just
that's
part
very
of Hollywood
interesting.
stuff
Hmm.
now, and
Okay.
that I shouldn't worry about it. It's
All
not going
right.
to affect me in any
So you kind of jumped
particular way.
off the cliff and then you found out
Yeah.
you were gonna land on a
The
trampoline.
other reaction is that I have is why would anybody want to collect something that I made? I don't think of myself that way. Um,
Well,
it,
you want to
it's
hear my sort of take on that,
yeah,
or
Yeah, I do.
is that well? Uh, I mean, I feel like, especially with the type of writing, literary writing that I I'm interested in, and probably we're all interested in. I mean, I think one of the downsides to that is that it needs to be mass produced and appeal to in order to make money, traditionally. And I like the idea more of something that has small amount of originals that are out there that people can
Yeah.
collect, and then people who genuinely have a sort of either they don't know you and they just really like the piece and they want to kind of add it to their collection of these are things, and like you would a piece of art or something, or they're, if I'm more not, I don't know if cynical is the right word, but I mean, I think it can be just as easy or as sort of non-highbrow as your son wants to collect it because or not. Sorry, I don't know if you have a son. I can't remember
Yeah,
if you
I
said
do.
No,
son,
he
but
said
I
he
do.
had a son.
He's actually a better writer than I am, I think.
but it could just be, and I used the example when Boo and I were talking early on, like my aunt might collect it, and stuff like that. But it gives a way to support the writer that is a direct funding to that writer and to the magazine, as opposed to
Yeah.
like doing a subscription where you have to like subscribe to the magazine as a whole, but Aunt Linda may not want to subscribe to the magazine, but she still wants to like support what I'm doing.
Yeah.
So that's sort of you know
Well, arguably, I have a bunch of books. I don't know if you can see, but I'm sitting in my library and it's books, walls of books everywhere. And the
Hmm.
ones that are signed by the authors are special to me. I have,
Hmm.
not lots, but a number that are signed by authors, either people I know or I just happen to find a copy that was affordable that was signed by somebody. And those are more special to me than
Hmm.
the
Because
beat
they're
up
collector's
paperback.
items. They're
Yeah.
collector's items. And that's
So
how we look at NFTs, as collector's items.
yeah, yeah. So
And
there's a
also the
book.
bookshelf that you have,
Yeah.
we see this technology, it hasn't quite evolved. We foresee or predict or hope that there will be sometime an app or technology where, for example, I could have a bookshelf like my favorite science writers, and Steven Swiryn's story, The Deep Field, would be on my virtual bookshelf. And somebody might be able to go to my webpage and open up my science folder
Oh,
and see
yeah.
which NFTs I've collected, almost like looking at my bookshelf. And like if I came over to your office to say hi, the first thing I would do would just look at all the books on your shelf and see what books you have. That's the kind of person I am. Like even
Yeah.
when you started looking, I'm like, what books are there? Or like when I, if your wife's a social worker, if I go to a new therapist's office, I look to see what books that therapist has on the shelves
Yeah.
because that tells me what kind of therapist they are and whether or not they're smart. And they better be smart. So we see this NFT thing in a digital universe because we are books are, I don't know, I love books as much as anyone, but like I also have two teenagers and I know how they feel about books. They're not quite as into books as I am, and I imagine your grandchild will probably be a little more digitally oriented.
They
So
are,
this is
but
looking
but
forward.
they're limited. They're severely limited by their wise parents, and they both are avid readers.
Yeah.
The younger one, who
How
just
old
turned
are they?
9. Well, they just turned 9 and 11, and the 11-year-old has already read all of Harry Potter, of course, and she's
Yeah.
she's reading. I think she's on the second or third volume of Lord of the Rings now, and
So I'm not saying,
the
okay,
little
I'm
one's
sorry.
on
I
the
should
fourth
leave your
volume of Harry
grandkids.
Potter, so
All
they
right, we'll
read a
leave your
lot.
grandkids out of it. We'll leave your grandkids out of it. But I would say trend wise and as a parent, my daughter's a big reader too. But there's a lot of kids that are not as book oriented and also they read shorter pieces. So I just again looking forward, like, this is a short story. So it has its own shelf in our imaginary fantasy NFT shelf system, and somebody can go there and collect it. That is the idea. And
Yeah.
so, um, and we like the idea, but like David always points out, the technology is not quite there yet, but we're ahead of the curve.
in
So
case it
speaking of
does
that,
get there. Yeah.
what?
In case it
Would
does
you?
get there, we'll be
Yeah,
we'll
I
we'll
think
be
we'll
there.
get there.
Yeah.
I think that's really interesting that I can't remember who it was, but the Hollywood producer,
Yeah.
is it a relative or a friend? I can't
Yeah, she's a
remember.
cousin.
Okay,
Yeah,
that
Andrew
she has
Gordon is her name.
NFT because it's interesting that she has NFT clauses in her contracts because you wouldn't really know it because it's NFT technology is not really there yet, even in
I'd never heard
Hollywood
of
that
it
I'm aware
before
of.
you
Yeah,
mentioned it in an email.
yeah.
It was something brand new to me.
Yeah, that
That's
is
very
interesting.
interesting. Well,
So
it's
now I'll be paying
exciting.
more attention.
Well, I hope you'll send out your I hope you'll send out to all of your very like high sounds like you have a lot of connections in high places. So I hope you'll send this out to all of them so we can get them like on our radar. I my ex-husband's parents lived in Santa Fe also,
Uh,
and it's a pretty cool place to retire. You know, just a lot going on, a lot of really smart people.
yeah,
All the people
Yeah,
from
from the
down
lab.
valley from the lab kind of
yeah.
filter in. I went to like a used bookstore in Santa Fe and I bought a bunch of physics books by somebody who was very evolved in, you know, it was his collection. You know, there would be little stamps. These books were nuts, but like, you know, there's just a lot of smart people floating around Santa Fe. So,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah, Santa Fe's like that.
Mm-hmm.
The
yes.
other thing I wanted to mention when you were asking about, does my science inform my writing or
Mm-hmm.
does it come from that? The other thing that's connected to the writing sometimes, which has been a lot of fun, is music. And music is, after family, music is the most important thing in my life to me.
Oh, cool.
I listen
Me
endless
too.
to music.
I know I was going to
I
say you're
go to
speaking
we
David's
go
love
to
language.
concerts all the
Yeah.
time and stuff. And I agonized last night over watching the game, which I did, or going to my mandolin lesson, which I really wanted.
Mm.
And I play guitar. And one of the things that I was involved with for a while was songwriting. And there was a great lecture. I forget the name of the person who lectured, but there was a lecture at Breadloaf when I was there one summer about what's the relationship between lyrics and poetry.
Mm.
So there's all that stuff,
That's
and
really
it
interesting.
turns out I've written a number of songs. I've performed on rare occasions, which is terrifying, uh, in some sketchy bars and coffee houses. Although I think nothing of to talk about science, talk about cardiac electrophysiology in front of anywhere from 2 to 1,000 people doesn't make me the slightest bit nervous. I really enjoy it. But standing in front of any number of people playing guitar and singing my own songs was just terrifying and therefore a lot of fun.
I
And
agree
it
That's
100%.
turns
super
out
brave. Yeah.
that there are the songs became ideas for short stories and vice
Mm-hmm.
versa.
Mm.
And there are lines in some of my stories that are quotations from songs. And sometimes somebody in my writing group or whatever will say, "Well, what's that about?" Oh, that can't be edited out because that's from the song that this story came from. And it means
Mm.
something to me, even though it's sort of in the background. And some editor, if it ever gets published, would probably throw it out.
Are there any
But
lines in the are there any lines in the
they're
deep
not in
field?
the deep field. Um, but one of my newer stories actually has parts of it's about a singer-songwriter and his relationship with a young woman that he has a relationship with. And and there are parts of two of my songs in
In the
the
story.
story that are that relate hopefully to the story, but nobody's wanted that one yet. And I'm
That's
still
really
working on it.
interesting. That's really interesting. You know,
Mm-hmm.
David, you're speaking David's love language because he's also a musician, and I also was a singer-songwriter. I put out
Ah,
records in the '90s.
oh,
So
nice.
I totally hear you. That might be something we can write about in the profile, you know, because
Yeah,
I mean,
we
I'm
should.
getting lots of ideas talking to you
Yeah, I think
about
it
what we're
says
going to
something
write
in my
about.
bio about singer-songwriter.
Okay. Okay.
Do you have any recorded songs we could maybe
Well, that
use in the?
you heard my ringtone went off because
I did not hear that.
I forgot to turn off my phone, and my wife called me not realizing we were doing this, and my ringtone is a lullaby that I wrote for my grandchildren.
Mm.
That
Okay.
the one of the highlights of my creative life is they still request it after,
Well, if you
now
have a recording,
they're so grown.
if you have any recordings that you are proud of that you want to share, send them along and maybe we can even use them in the post because again, like we want to celebrate your creativity and
Okay.
and I'm just very impressed, and I'm very impressed, and I think I'm really glad that we connected with you because of where you are in your journey as a person and as an artist. And something else that David and I sometimes talk about on our podcast is how hard it is to make a living as an artist, and you had a whole life as a
I don't have
doctor.
to do that.
Yeah, you had a whole life as it's a good idea, and then then you can
Yeah,
just do it later,
yeah, yeah.
So I find that also just that links into some of the topics that the themes that David and I have returned to time and again on this podcast. Like you mentioned Breadloaf. Were you at Breadloaf as a fellow or like
Breadloaf was I submitted a story. You have to submit some
Mhm.
writing samples. I submitted a story. One of my teachers here encouraged me to. I'd never heard of it, so
Yeah.
she said, "Oh, there's a teacher here named Goldie Goldblum who you might know her
Mhm.
writing, and she encouraged me to submit a story to Breadloaf, and I got in, and it's very expensive, but it was magical, just magical. It was one of the best 10-day things I've ever done. At Breadloaf, I was actually surprised, not displeased, but surprised that the workshop part of your writing was a very minor part of Breadloaf. It was an hour or two every day, whereas we were talking and living and learning writing from 7 o'clock in the morning till 11 o'clock at night every day. I mean, it was just
Yeah.
immersive, and it was so much fun because there's so many smart people there. There's a group here called the Off-Campus Writers Workshop that meets on
Okay.
Thursdays nearby where I live. So I've been to many of those. There's a group that just broke up after they started in the mid 40s, I think, and now they just
Oh
stopped
no.
meeting, called the Writers of Glencoe, and that was a terrific group of maybe 20 people who
Is that where you live, Glencoe?
I grew up in Glencoe. I live in
Man.
Winnetka, which is near there.
Writers of Glencoe. That's cool. And then what's my other question? Well, so it's not like you pulled this short story out of your hat,
Oh, no,
Stephen.
no, no.
Like,
I've been
yeah.
working on this, and there are
Yeah.
times when I felt like I was studying writing more than I was writing. Because
Yeah.
I
Well, that's
read,
how it
I've
is.
read a bunch of books about writing from all kinds
Oh
of different,
yeah. You
all
got
the
any
all the
favorites? Any
common,
that you recommend? Any of the books that you would
oh,
recommend?
many.
All
Yeah,
right.
I
Well, if
mean,
you
I,
think of
I
any in
have,
particular, will you send me a couple of titles? Because I can put them in the profile. I mean, I
I
really
can,
just,
I
I'm
can
gonna
send you
take
a
the
picture of my
angle.
bookshelf that
Do
has,
that. Do that. Do that.
Can I just ask one question about the music? Have you
yeah,
played with people too, or do you play
very
mostly by
little.
yourself? Okay.
I've not ever been good at playing with people and have had very little experience doing that. It's a whole
Mm,
other skill level, as you probably know. And
mm.
and I play with my guitar teacher some, but not really too much. It's a lot of fun, but it's a whole order of difficulty, and I'm not that good, so it's hard. Um, so mostly I just play solo. My wife and I are working on there's a lovely tune called The Lover's Waltz that we liked, and when we renewed our vows a couple of years ago, we had my guitar teacher got a little group together to play at the party, and we had him learn that so he could play it. And she's working on the piano part, and I'm working on mandolin, and we're hoping to do that as a duet. But beyond that, no, I don't play with people hardly at all. Um,
All right.
Well,
Well,
I really enjoyed this piece because it touched on that scientific stuff, and it also spoke personally about some things, and so I like the way you play with that. And so thanks for taking the time to talk to us about it a little more. And
well, you're very kind to say nice things about my writing. I like that piece too. I'm pleased with it. I was
yeah, so we'll when we present the newsletter, we'll be sure to mention other pieces. We might ask you for details about where people can find other work, and we'll also just encourage people to explore the NFT technology a little bit if they want to support you or support the magazine. It's not that complicated, and we're going to show you how to set up a wallet. That'll be the next steps probably. But we're going to say goodbye to the audience now. So thank you so much for tuning in today.
thank you. It's good to meet you both.